If she's that weak, maybe she's just a bad investment. Honestly, Sarah, go die somewhere else. You're lowering my property value. My mother didn't even blink when she said those words to me. My 6-year-old daughter was wheezing in my arms, her lips turning blue from the cold, and Patricia just stood there in her warm silk robe, annoyed that we woke her up. I wasn't asking for a handout. I was screaming for the $40,000 I entrusted to her for this exact emergency. Instead of helping, she kicked my suitcase off the porch and slammed the door in my face. I didn't bang on the door again. I took off my own coat, wrapped it around my dying child, and walked away into the snow. I realized right then that I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was a witness building a case. Have you ever had a family member who valued their sleep more than your survival? Tell me in the comments where you're listening from right now. I need to know I'm not the only one who's seen this kind of darkness. The only place open at 2 in the morning was the bus terminal downtown. It smelled like diesel fumes and floor cleaner. But it was warm. That was the only currency that mattered. I sat on a hard plastic bench, holding Lily against my chest, trying to transfer every ounce of my body heat into her shivering frame. She had finally stopped wheezing, lulled into a restless sleep by the hum of the vending machines. I stared at the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and felt something inside me fracture. It wasn't my heart. It was my loyalty. For 10 years, I had been the family's designated fixer. I wasn't just their daughter. I was their retirement plan, their crisis manager, and their personal bank. I worked 60-hour weeks as a forensic accountant, hunting down hidden assets for corporate clients, only to come home and hand my paycheck over to Gregory and Patricia. They called it contributing to the family legacy. I paid off their credit card debt from their trips to Europe. I covered the mortgage when Gregory's investments failed. I did it because I believed the lie. I believed we were a team. I believed that the separate savings account I built for Lily's lung surgery, $180,000 accumulated over 5 grueling years, was safe in their trust. I pulled out my phone, my fingers numb and clumsy. The screen glowed with a notification from Instagram. It was a post from my mother, uploaded 30 minutes ago. The photo showed her and my father sitting by a roaring fireplace, holding crystal glasses of brandy. The caption read, "So grateful for the peace of a quiet winter night, sending warmth to everyone." I looked at that photo. Then I looked at my daughter, sleeping in a bus station, wearing a coat that was too thin for a Boston winter. That is when I learned the true cost of poverty. It isn't just about being hungry or cold. It is about the invisibility. It is the realization that you are a ghost in your own life. To the people walking past us in that terminal, we were just a statistic. But to my parents, we were something worse. We were a liability. They didn't kick us out because they were teaching me a lesson about independence. They kicked us out because Lily's sickness was inconvenient, and my constant questions about the trust fund were getting annoying. They erased us because it was cheaper than loving us. I sat there for 4 hours, watching the battery on my phone drain, doing the math in my head. I audited my entire life that night. Every birthday they missed, every dollar they took, every time they called me dramatic for asking for basic respect. I realized that while I was freezing to keep my daughter alive, they were warm because they were burning my future to heat their house. When the sun finally came up, turning the gray slush on the streets into a blinding white glare, Lily stirred in my arms. She looked up at me, her eyes heavy and trusting. "Mommy," she whispered. "Are we going home?" I smoothed her hair back. "No, baby. We're going to get what's ours." I stood up. My legs were stiff, but my hands were steady. The daughter who begged for shelter died on that bench. The woman who walked out of the station was an auditor who had just found a discrepancy she intended to correct. The only sound in the room was the rhythmic hiss of the nebulizer machine. It was a cheap, plastic sound, but to me, it sounded like a choir of angels. We were in a charity clinic 3 blocks from the bus station. A nurse with tired eyes and a gentle touch had set us up in a small exam room, wrapping Lily in a heated blanket and giving her the breathing treatment my mother had thrown into the snow. I watched the mist rise from the mask on Lily's face. Her color was coming back, the terrifying blue fading into a pale, exhausted pink. Her chest rose and fell, rose and fell. Each breath was a victory. Each breath was also a furious accusation against the people who had put us here. For the first time in 12 hours, the adrenaline crashed. My hands stopped shaking and went still. And in that stillness, something profound happened. The daughter in me died. I had spent 29 years making excuses for them. I told myself they were just strict. They were just old school. They loved me in their own way. I had built a cathedral of justifications to protect myself from the truth. But looking at my daughter hooked up to a machine because her grandmother couldn't be bothered to unlock a door, the cathedral collapsed. This wasn't tough love. Tough love is making you pay your own car insurance. This was attempted murder. They knew Lily's condition. They knew the temperature. They looked at a child gasping for air and decided her life was worth less than their uninterrupted sleep. They hadn't just evicted me. They had tried to erase us because we were inconvenient. I looked at my reflection in the dark window of the exam room. I looked wrecked, hair matted, eyes red, coat stained with slush. But underneath the exhaustion, I felt a cold clarity settling in, like ice forming over a lake. I wasn't Sarah the scapegoat anymore. I wasn't the disappointment. I was Sarah the auditor, and I had just witnessed a massive discrepancy in the ledger. I reached into my bag and pulled out my laptop. It was battered, covered in stickers Lily had placed there, but it held the keys to everything I needed. My parents thought I was stupid. They thought because I was quiet, because I did what I was told, that I wasn't paying attention. They forgot what I did for a living. They forgot that I spent my days tracking down hidden assets for Fortune 500 companies. They forgot that 10 years ago, when their spending first started spiraling, I was the one who set up their online banking. I was the one who created the family emergency trust for Lily. I had access, not legal ownership. They had insisted their names be primary for tax purposes, but I had the passwords. I had the admin rights. I opened the laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dim room. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't afraid. I was just curious. I wanted to see the math. I wanted to see exactly how much my daughter's life was worth to them. Mom? Lily's voice was muffled behind the mask. I looked up. She was watching me, her eyes heavy. Are you working? Yes, baby, I said, my voice steady and low. I'm just checking the numbers. I hit enter. The loading circle spun. I wasn't looking for an apology anymore. I was looking for the receipts. The screen blinked once, then resolved into a spreadsheet of numbers that made the air leave my lungs. I was looking at the Lily Medical Trust account. I expected to see the balance I had memorized. $180,000. Instead, I saw 4 digits. 0.00. I didn't gasp. I didn't cry. My forensic brain took over, bypassing the heartbreak and going straight to the audit. I clicked the transaction history. One massive wire transfer, dated 3 days ago. The recipient wasn't a hospital or a specialist. It was an entity called St. Patricia Holdings, LLC. I opened a new tab. A simple corporate registry search brought up the filing. St. Patricia Holdings had one asset listed: a purchase order for a 40-foot luxury yacht. The model was a sleek, white fiberglass monstrosity designed for champagne cruises and vanity photos. The name on the stern, printed in gold lettering on the digital receipt, was the St. Patricia. The purchase price: $220,000. They hadn't just drained Lily's medical fund. They had drained my personal savings too. Every dollar I had scraped together from overtime shifts. Every bonus I had saved instead of buying new clothes. Every cent was gone. They had taken the money meant to fix my daughter's lungs and used it to buy a floating monument to my mother's ego. My hands flew across the keyboard. I needed more. I logged into the smart home system I had installed for them last Christmas. It backed up to a cloud server they didn't even know existed. I scrolled to the timestamp. 2:14 a.m. Last night. The video loaded. It was a wide-angle shot of the living room. The fire was roaring. Patricia walked into the frame, holding something small and blue in her hand. It was Lily's spare inhaler, the one I had begged her to grab before she locked us out. On the screen, my mother didn't look conflicted. She didn't look sad. She looked annoyed. She tossed the inhaler into the fire like it was a candy wrapper. Then she turned to Gregory, who was pouring a drink, and laughed. Silence at last, she said. God, Sarah is such a drain. At least the rent money we saved bought us something nice. That was the moment I understood the narcissist's math. For years, I wondered how they slept at night. I wondered how they could take so much from me and still treat me with such disdain. Watching that video, I finally got it. They didn't see themselves as thieves. In their twisted ledger, my existence was a debt I could never repay. They believed they earned that money simply by tolerating me. They viewed my labor, my salary, and my daughter's future as a service fee they were entitled to collect. They didn't steal Lily's surgery money. They just reallocated their own property. They thought they were the victims of my burden. I closed the video window. I didn't need to see any more. I wasn't going to call the police. The police would call this a civil dispute and tell me to get a lawyer I couldn't afford. No. I was going to use the one weapon that scares rich people more than prison. I opened the IRS website. I navigated to Form 211. Application for Award for Original Information. It's the whistleblower form. I began to type. I listed the unreported income. I listed the shell company, St. Patricia Holdings, which I knew for a fact they hadn't declared on their taxes because I used to do their taxes. And they never mentioned a yacht. I attached the bank logs showing the wire transfers. I attached the bill of sale. I detailed 15 years of consulting fees that were actually just my stolen wages laundered through their accounts. I didn't feel guilty. I felt like a surgeon cutting out a tumor. I reviewed the file one last time. Under alleged violation, I typed tax evasion, wire fraud, and unreported assets. I hit submit. A small confirmation box popped up. Submission received. Reference number #height 920 FOUR. That number was going to bury them. Winter didn't leave Boston that year. It just moved indoors, specifically into the grand ballroom of the Copley Plaza Hotel. 3 months had passed since the night I filed the IRS report. 3 months of silence. My parents probably thought I had crawled into a hole to die of shame. They didn't realize I was just waiting for the fiscal quarter to close. The Winter Heart Charity Gala was the event of the season. Tickets cost $500 a plate. The room smelled of expensive perfume and self-congratulation. I stood in the shadows of the velvet curtains at the back of the room, adjusting the cuffs of my new tailored suit. I wasn't wearing the stained puffer coat anymore. I was wearing my audit armor. On stage, my mother held a microphone like it was a scepter. She was wearing a floor-length silver gown that shimmered under the spotlights. Around her neck was a diamond choker that I recognized immediately. I had sent her the money for that necklace 2 years ago when she claimed she needed emergency dental work. It sparkled beautifully. It looked exactly like my unpaid student loans. "We strive to help every child," Patricia said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. She wiped a single, elegant tear from her cheek. "Even when our own family struggles, when we have loved ones who refuse our help due to their own mental battles, we pour that love into the community instead." The crowd applauded. A few women in the front row dabbed their eyes with napkins. My father, Gregory, stood beside her, looking solemn and noble, his hand resting supportively on her back. They were the picture of benevolent grace. They had turned their cruelty into a marketing campaign. They were selling my mental illness to explain why their daughter and granddaughter were homeless, while they lived on a yacht bought with stolen trust funds. Beside me, a wheelchair motor hummed. "She's acting is getting worse," a dry voice croaked. I looked down at Eleanor. My grandmother was dressed in black silk, looking frail and harmless to anyone who didn't know she was a viper in pearls. She had flown in from Geneva yesterday when I told her the audit was complete. She wasn't here to facilitate a reunion. She was here to sign the eviction notice on her own son. "Are you ready?" she asked. "I was ready 3 months ago," I whispered. We slipped along the edge of the room toward the AV booth. The technician tried to stop us, but Eleanor calmly placed a white envelope on his console. $5,000. 5 minutes away. 1 unplugged cable. He chose wisely. I connected my laptop just as my father raised his glass on stage, announcing a grand charity project, a floating medical unit called the St. Patricia. The room applauded. I felt sick. They weren't just stealing, they were performing virtue. My mother smiled in pearls worth more than my daughter's surgery. This was narcissism winning, turning stolen money into applause. I stepped out of the shadows. "A floating hospital?" I asked evenly. "Or a getaway boat, Dad?" The room froze. I hit enter. The screen behind them changed. Security footage filled the ballroom our house during the blizzard. My mother's voice echoed. "Let the brat freeze. It's quieter." The donors gasped as they watched her throw my daughter's inhaler into the fire. Then the screen split. Lily's medical trust withdrawal on one side, the yacht bill of sale on the other. "You didn't build a hospital," I said. "You stole a 6-year-old's surgery fund and evicted us to hide it." My mother screamed about lies and deepfakes. I calmly held up a document. "If it was an investment for Lily," I asked, "why did you declare the money as consulting income and hide it from the IRS?" Silence. "And this," I added, "is IRS Form 211, the whistleblower report." The doors opened. IRS criminal investigation agents entered with a federal warrant. Assets seized, accounts frozen, the boat included. As my mother was led away in handcuffs, she screamed that she'd given me life. "And you tried to take my daughters," I replied. Debt settled. I walked out into the cold Boston night. For the first time in years, I didn't feel it. The fallout was total. Prison sentences, assets auctioned, reputations erased. The whistleblower award paid for my daughter's surgery. She runs now. She breathes freely. I learned something simple. Family is behavior, not blood. And peace isn't begged for. It's audited, then seized.